Hello. All right. I'm Teacher Cole here. Right. So in this video, we're gonna revise this topic, reproduction in flowering plants. It is an important topic, right? One of the important topics that we have to be clear about when we during exams. Okay. So it's upper block topic. It is a primary 5, usually taught in primary 5, right? So we're gonna do some revision now. Okay, so as we go through the questions, I hope that you have already attempted the questions. If you have not, you should pause the video, all right, attempt it before you watch my solutions. All right. Okay, let's take a look at question 1. Where the diagram below shows 2 flowers on plant X and 1 flower on a different plant Y. The 2 flowers are of the same species, right? Which transfer of pollen will bring about pollination, right? So pollination is the transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma. So we know that these are the anthers, right? I'm going to just color the anther. These are the anthers, right? So for for plant X, these are the anthers of the flower. And what is the purpose of the anther? Right, the purpose of the anther, the function of the anther is to produce pollen grains, which is a male reproductive, which contain the male reproductive cells. Okay, and for plant Y, these are the anthers, which are going to produce pollen grains. Okay, so for the stigma, where are the stigmas? So these are the stigmas, right? I'm going to color it blue. Okay, these are the stigmas. Actually, it's only the top part, yeah. So these are the stigmas. So what is the stigma for? What's the function of the stigma? Is basically is to receive pollen grain. Right. So what is pollination? It is basically the transfer of pollen. It is basically is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Okay, so looking at this, you will see that the answer will be D, because the pollen will be produced by the anther here and it gets transferred to the stigma here. All right, so answer is 4. Okay, question 2. Study the 5 flowers shown below. Which of the flowers can develop into fruits? Now, for the flowers to develop into fruits, 2 processes must take place. The 2 processes are pollination, okay, and fertilization. Okay, so pollination and fertilization, and both will take place on the female parts of the flower. So we want to look for the female parts of the flower. And if you look at A, these are the female parts of the flower. You see the stigma attached to the style and then to the ovary. Right, this is the female part. Okay, so for C, I don't see any female parts. For D, this is the female parts of flower. And E, these are female parts of flower. So these are the female parts of the flower. Now, how to identify if these are female parts of flower? Right, sometimes different flowers, the stigma looks differently. But you see that if it's attached all the way to the center and there is an ovary here, so you know that it must be the female part if it's attached to the ovary, the swollen part of the flower. Okay, at the bottom. So these are the female parts. So as long as they have the female parts of the flower, the female reproductive parts, which is the stigma, the style, ovary, and ovule, it can be pollinated and therefore it can be fertilized. All right. So which of the flowers can develop into fruits? You should look for flowers with the female reproductive parts. And there's A, B, D, and E. Answer 3. Okay, so C, I don't see, and right, there's no female reproductive parts of the flower, and the rest have. Okay, all right, let's go to the next question, question 3. The diagram below shows the development of a flowering plant. What are the processes that will take place, right? So we have three processes here: pollination, fertilization, and germination. And in this diagram, we have from flower to fruits to seed and seedling and adult plant. Okay, so we know that for flower to develop into a fruit, I've mentioned just now, two important processes must take place. Two important processes must take place. Number one, pollination must take place. They are not able to move to transfer the pollen grains on their own. They will need the help of the animals or wind to transfer the pollen grains. Number two, after the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma, then the fertilization will be the next stage that has to take place before the flower can develop into a fruit. Yeah, how do they develop into a fruit? Basically, the ovary will become the fruit, and the ovules will become the seed. Now, sometimes we are not very sure which is the ovary, which is the ovule, or whether you develop the fruit or develop the seeds. Okay, so to do this, you basically you look at the shape of the stigma. This is the style, and this is the ovary, right? And inside there are the ovules. So the first thing we need to identify is, do you know that this is the ovary? Do you know that inside is called the ovules? All right. So if you're confused whether is it the ovary or is it the ovules that develop into a fruit with seeds, now you must know the ovules are inside the ovules. But the ovules are inside the ovary, is inside. So if you look at a cross section of an apple, a cross section of an apple. Okay, so if this is an apple and you cut it into half, won't you see seeds in the apple? Right, you will see some seeds in the apple, right? So if you see the seeds in the apple, you see the seeds are inside. The seeds are inside. Actually, so this fruit, this apple looks very much like the ovary and the ovules. It's just that the ovary has now swollen to become the fruit, and the ovules, very tiny little ovules, has already developed into the seeds. They are still inside. The ovary is still outside, the one that's swollen, and the ovules are the seeds that's inside, develop the seeds. That's still inside the fruit. Okay, so this is how we differentiate, right? So if you want to know the processes that take place from a flower to be a fruit, you must know two processes must take place at M. All right, so at M will be where pollination and fertilization must take place there. Okay, and germination is the from the seed, it germinates into a seedling. Okay, from seed to seedling, this is germination. So it is J, answer 3. Okay, question 4. The diagrams below show the reproductive systems of a human being and a flower respectively. Which part of the flower, W, X, Y, Z, has the same function as part P of the human reproductive system? So the parts P here, it is clear that this is referring to the testis of the male reproductive system, and the testis, the purpose is to produce sperm, cells, which is the male reproductive cell. Okay, so this is the male reproductive cell. All right, and which part of the flower produce the male reproductive cell? Yes, it is the anther. These are the anther. So this X is the anther, which also produce the pollen grain, which contains the male reproductive cell as well. Okay, so answer will be X, answer 2. Okay, question 3, 5. All right, so this is an open-ended questions. What is pollination? So to answer this, what is pollination? All right, pollination is basically the transfer of pollen grain. Very important, huh? Okay, let me just am I able to write it down? Okay, never mind. I'm just going to write. Okay, so pollination is basically the transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma, okay, of a flower. You can say of the same species. Okay, so what are the key words here in this answer? The keywords here would be, I will want to see transfer of pollen grains. I will want to see transfer of pollen grains. This I will classify as keyword. And I want to see from anther to stigma. Okay, so this will be the keywords I will want to see. They don't really matter how you phrase them, as long as I see these words appearing in your answer. Transferring of pollen grains from anther to the stigma. Okay, and so what is fertilization? Fertilization, okay, occurs when the male reproductive cell fuses, okay, with the female reproductive cell. Okay, so I'll be looking for the keywords here. Let me see what is the keywords that I will think is important. It will be the male reproductive cell fuses with the female reproductive cell. Now, is this referring to fertilization in plants, or is it referring to fertilization in animals? It doesn't matter because both are the same, right? So talk about fertilization, it means the male reproductive cell must fuse with the female reproductive cell. Okay, so these are the ones you read are the keywords. Number 7, study the flowers shown below. Which of the flowers will not develop into a fruit? Explain why. So remember, for a flower to develop into a fruit, 2 processes must take place, right? The 2 processes are, number 1, you must pollination must take place, and number 2, fertilization, right? And these 2 processes only take place on the female parts of the flower. So you want to look for the female parts of the flower, and I see that flower P, there is a female part of the flower. And Q, the female part of flower is cut, the stigma is cut away, right? And R, the stigma is still there, the rest of the female parts are still there. Okay, so which of the flower will not develop a fruit will be flower Q, which does not have the female reproductive parts of the flower. Okay, so answer will be flower Q. Now, this question is an explain question. Explain question, which means that we want to structure our answer in terms of CER. Okay, we want to structure our answer in terms of CER. What is CER? Which is your claim. Okay, you have to give your claim or your choice. My claim is flower Q. My answer is flower Q. And why do I know that it is flower Q? You must have seen something, that's why you think it's flower Q, right? So that will be your evidence. What did you see? Oh, I see that flower Q does not have the stigma, or you can say the stigma is being removed. Okay, that is what I see, and because I see that, I know it's not going to develop into a fruit, right? So that is my evidence. So evidence is basically your observation. Okay, take note, this is basically your observation. And then you come to the R part. So what is the R? So if this is C, the E, so the reason. So no stigma. How does it like not allow it to become a fruit? Because without a stigma, it cannot be. So flower Q cannot be pollinated and fertilized. And therefore cannot be developed into a fruit. All right. So this is my answer. And what are the keywords here? All right. I will want to have an evidence. Please tell me that it does not have a stigma, or you can say the stigma is removed. Please tell me that it cannot be pollinated and therefore cannot be fertilized. These are keywords, the key processes that does not allow it to become a fruit. Okay. So part B, same thing. Which of the flowers can, right? Instead of cannot develop fruit, now I'm asking for can. And you see this explain. What does explain mean? Yep, it means CER, right? It means CER. So which one can develop, but claim will be flowers P and R. Right, so flowers P and R can both develop into a fruit. Why is that so? What did I see that allow me to know that, oh, it will develop a fruit? I see that flowers P and R has all the female reproductive parts. All right, all the female reproductive parts of the flower intact. They have all the female reproductive parts. It's not removed, including the stigma. So the reason, therefore, flowers P and QR can be pollinated and can be fertilized and develop into a fruit. Okay, so I'll be looking for in this answer, I'll be looking for your evidence, which is saying that it has the female reproductive parts. Okay, you can also mention yes, the stigma. I think it has the stigma. Okay, all right, or female reproductive parts, and therefore it can be pollinated. This will be keyword. Okay, this will be important, and therefore can be fertilized. Okay, thank you. All right, next one, number 8. If a farmer killed all the caterpillars in his farm, explain how killing all the caterpillars may lead to less fruits being harvested. Now, if this farmer is a fruits farmer, right, it has an orchard that grows fruit. If he kill all the caterpillars, how is it harmful for the plants? Now, caterpillars, when it is in the larva, it is the young of caterpillar butterflies. In the larval stage, the caterpillar they eat a lot. They eat a lot and they eat a lot of leaves. So a lot of times the farmers are not very happy with it because if your farm is infested with caterpillars, a lot of your crops, are going to have a lot of holes. And sometimes if it's so many caterpillars, it can wipe out the entire plant. Okay, so they are not too happy with caterpillars because they eat a lot of the crops away. So they tend to want to get rid of them. But the only problem is caterpillars can develop into or will develop into butterflies. Right. So by killing all the caterpillars, there are going to be no caterpillars to develop the butterflies. If there are no butterflies, the number of pollinators are going to be less than before. And therefore, your flowers in the farm, the rate of pollination will be less. Not all flowers will be pollinated. Less flowers will be pollinated and fertilized, and you get less fruits. Okay, so if you're a fruit farmer, then that's not a very nice or a wise way to get rid of the caterpillars, because you end up having less pollinators in your orchard, and you need the pollinators to pollinate the flowers and to get them fertilized. Okay, so how the caterpillars may lead to less fruits being harvested. Again, this is an explain question. Explain question meaning CER. Right, CER. Okay, so let's start from the C, our claim. So, or in this case, there is no claim. All right, they didn't ask a question. When do we need to have a claim? We need to have a claim when there is another question in front of the explain, like the previous one. There's a question mark. So make sure that you answer this question mark before you go to explain. Just like the previous question, there is a question mark before the explain. Make sure you give it an answer before you explain. Okay, so in part question 8, there is no C, right? There's no need to give a claim. You just have to explain by giving our evidence. So what is our evidence? Okay, so what do we see, right? So I see that if you kill all the caterpillars, that means there's going to the only evidence I can see, my observation is there are no more caterpillars left, right? So maybe I'll just write out there are no more caterpillars in the farm. All right, if there are no more caterpillars in the farm, and how is this bad? So, and will not, and so if there are no more caterpillars in the farm, so there'll be no caterpillars. There are no caterpillars to develop into butterflies. Okay, so therefore there are less pollinators, right? To less pollinators in the farm, so less flowers are pollinated and fertilized, right, and develop into less fruits. Okay, so this would be something like that. So my evidence will be there's no more caterpillars, not super important, but then because I really repeat it in the reason, so there are no caterpillars develop butterflies, there are less pollinators now. So take note, there are less pollinators, not no pollinators, okay? Because there could be still other pollinators, right? Like bees as well. All right, so less flowers, I do not say no flowers, I will say less. Less flowers are pollinated, and therefore make sure fertilize is also there. Fertilization is a keyword. Okay. Okay, so less pollinators. Less pollinated and fertilized. All right, question 9. So this is a PSLE question, right? So the diagram shows two seeds E and F. How are the seeds dispersed? So for seed E is clearly by wind, because you have that parachute-like structure, the wing-like structure, and for F will be by splitting, okay, or explosive action. Okay, it is not by explosion, now it's the explosive action. Okay, so state an advantage of the dispersal method used by E. E is dispersed by wind. And how is dispersal by wind an advantage? Now, it is an advantage because the seeds E, dispersal by wind, can be dispersed further. It can be dispersed further by the wind. Right? And so how is this an advantage? Why do you want to go so far? Why do you want to be dispersed so far away? Oh, so that the young will be less overcrowded. Not totally no overcrowding. I cannot prevent overcrowding, but there is less. I wouldn't say totally no. I wouldn't say use the word prevent as well. Less overcrowded, and therefore there is less competition of sunlight, or sunlight, mineral salts, space, and water, okay, with the parent plant. Okay, so SMSW, you can also say nutrients. You can also say nutrients. You don't have to say mineral salts. You can also say nutrients unless your teacher do not allow. Otherwise, in PSLE, it should be fine to say nutrients instead of mineral salts. But right, one way that we can remember this is SMSW. MSSW is like Superman, Superwoman. Yeah, Superman, Superwoman is one way that we can remember it. Okay, so take note that there is going to be less competition and not no competition. Less overcrowded and not prevent overcrowding. Okay, sometimes you use the word prevent. Don't use the word prevent. It cannot be prevented. Yeah. Okay, so seed E is dispersed by wind further. Wind can disperse seeds further. But how about F? Can F have an advantage too? Now, generally, wind disperses the seeds further by splitting. The seeds are dispersed all very near to the parent plant. But everything usually has a good and bad to it. Yeah, there must be some kind of benefit, some kind of advantage to splitting as well. So, what could be a possible advantage that a plant disperses the seeds by splitting? Okay, it is that it does not need to depend on the wind. But even if there's a day with zero wind, it is still able to disperse the seeds when there's no wind. And isn't that an advantage? You don't have to depend on other factors to help you. Okay, so the advantage is the dispersal by CF is dispersed by splitting. Okay, or can be dispersed by splitting even when there is no wind. It does not depend on wind, right? So just write out CF does not depend on wind to disperse the seeds. All right, so this is an advantage that you don't have to depend on others. You can disperse the seeds yourself. Okay. Question 10. State how fruit X is being dispersed. Give a reason for your answer. Now, give a reason is a little bit different from explain. Okay. Now, when we talk about explain, generally, when we talk about explain, we need to give your C, E, and R. Okay. For give a reason, right? Generally, just give a C and an E. You don't really need to give the R. For example, you just give your observation. Oh, I see that it's dispersed by wind because I see that it has a wing-like structure. That is my observation, and that is good enough. That is my E. So here's wing-like structure, full stop. Okay, I don't have to explain how the wing-like structure help the plants to help the seed to be dispersed further away. I don't have to say that because it's just give a reason. Okay, but if you want to say more, I don't think is you can. No, it's just not needed for now. Right. So the how is it dispersed? My C, my claim will be it is dispersed by wind. Okay, and the evidence part. Okay, fruit X has a wing-like structure. That's it. All right. If you want to say more, the R part, which will be allow it to stay afloat in the air for a longer period of time, can be dispersed by wind further away, things like that. Okay. But for now, it does have a key C and a E. That's good enough for now. Okay. All right. So part B. So this fruit is usually found near growing to the top of the tree. Right. So imagine there's a tree here. Here, a tree. And this fruit is found like near the top. of the tree, how does this benefit the plant, the tree, right? So if it's near the tree, the top of the tree, when it falls, it's going to stay in the air longer period of time, and it can be dispersed by the wind further away, right? This will give it less competition for sunlight, water, nutrient, space, help it grow healthier, less overcrowding. Okay, this is the benefit. If it's just below the tree, can you see that it's going to be dispersed much nearer? So this is not as good as the seed that can be dispersed further. Okay, so by staying near the top of the tree, let's do a, right, well, how does it benefit the plant? Okay, so by going near the top of the tree, the fruit eggs can stay afloat in the air longer. Okay, if it can stay afloat in the air longer, so therefore, oops, so fruit eggs can be dispersed by wind further, dispersed by wind further. Use the word disperse. Don't use other words. Don't use words like fly. Use the word dispersed. Okay, by wind further. You must have the er. Okay, further can be is a comparison as compared to if it's not at the near top of the tree. Okay, so how is dispersing by wind further an advantage? Is that a benefit? Why you want to disperse far away? Oh, because when you disperse far away, right, the young will be, oops, okay, oops. Okay, so the young will be less overcrowded. Okay, and there is less competition of Superman, Superwoman, right, or Super Mao San Wang, all right, sunlight, mineral salts, space, and water. All right, so Super Mao San Wang also can. All right, so less competition of the sunlight, mineral salts, space, and water. Okay. Less overcrowded, it is one of the things that I'll be looking for. And I want to see dispersed by wind further. Can be dispersed further. Right? So how does the wing-like structure benefit the seeds or the plants? All right. So once the wing-like structure basically it also is very similar to the part B answer. The wing-like structure. Okay, let's write down wing-like structure. How does it benefit? It basically increases the exposed surface area so that it can stay afloat in the air longer. Okay, and why do you want to stay in air longer? So they can be dispersed by wind further, less overcrowded, and less competition for sunlight, mineral salts, space, and water. Okay, so let's write it down. How does it benefit the wing-like structure? It increases the exposed of the seeds or fruit, right? So when increase exposed surface area, so the seed can stay afloat in the air longer, right? So the seed can be dispersed by wind further. Okay, it is by wind further, and therefore, so the young will be less overcrowded, and there is less competition of super Mao right? Sunlight, mineral salt, space, and all right, and this is where definitely an advantage, and they'll grow healthier. Okay, so this is a long answer. Well, in actual fact, they probably will not expect all these points. You probably just write a few points and they will have given you the mark. Okay, so to me, I think there's some key points to take note will be exposed surface area. To have wind structure increase exposed surface area, so stay afloat in the air longer period of time. So it can be dispersed by wind further. So there's less of a crowding and less competition for super Mao Shan. Okay, SMSW. All right. Question 11. The diagram shows two islands which are near each other and surrounded by the sea. There are no animals living on the islands. So at first, there are 4 types of plants growing on P, but none on Q. Right, so the table shows the characteristics of the seeds of the 4 types of plants. So after some time, which plant is least likely to be found growing on island Q? Okay, which plant is least likely to be found or growing on island Q? So this thing, okay, so this island is separated by the sea. Okay, so if you want to you look at all these plants, which one can't go so far away, right? So okay, I know that W is light with wing-like structure, so this is likely to be dispersed by the wind. All right. X has a fibrous husk, so is likely to be dispersed by water. Y is the one big and heavy seed surrounded by juicy flesh is likely to be dispersed by animals. Z stored in dry sea pods, it is likely to be dispersed by splitting. Okay, so after some time, which plant, all right, is least likely to be found? So I will know that the splitting usually cannot go so far, right? It's only dispersed very near the parent plant. And also, they say there are no animals living on the island, so it means that it cannot be dispersed by animal. So the only 2 possible answers are the wind and water, which is W and X. Okay, so least likely will be Y and Z. All right, so after some time, which plant? So you take note that we are looking for plants. Something give a bracket. They give you a bracket S, which means there's a chance of more than one. So we are looking for least likely. So this again, it says that is a explain. What does explain mean? Explain meaning CER. Okay, it means C. I'll give our claim, evidence, and the reason. So let's take a look. All right. So, okay. So what is our claim? Our claim that the fruits will be plants Y and Z. Okay, that's my claim. My evidence. Okay, evidence is my observation and inference. Okay, so my direct observation is I see that Y has a big and heavy seed surrounded by juicy flesh. This is my direct observation. But my inference is dispersed by animal X. Okay, so the seed of Y is dispersed by animals. So it's dispersed by animals, and the seed of Z is dispersed by splitting. These are my observations, right? My observation and inference. Then I have to explain, so what, right? Dispersed by animal, dispersed splitting, so what? Why can't it be found in Q? Oh, because there are no animals on the islands to disperse seed of Z. All right. And for splitting and the splitting of seeds spitting or only disperse the seeds near the parent plant and not across the seed. Here's something like that. Okay, so CER, that's it. So what I will want to see is your evidences, right? I want to see your evidences. Okay, I also want to see your reasoning. Why can't we disperse animal? Because there's no animals on the island. Why can't we disperse by splitting? Because it's only dispersed near the parent plant. Okay. All right, so let's go to part B. So what happens to the plants if they are dispersed near the parent plant? All right, so this is again a repetition. We want to practice writing, right? The plants will be overcrowded, okay, and will be there is be more competition for super 猫上王, okay, sunlight, mineral salts, space, and water, and grow less healthily. Okay, so that will be the answer. Just practice writing the same kind. Okay, question 12. A rambutan fruit is shown below, right? Describe how the rambutan seeds can be dispersed over a wide area, right? So dispersing of seeds is just like the Grab food or the Food Panda they order food, right? There are 3 steps that they do to deliver the food. And the first thing is they want to take the food. Second step, they want to travel to your place. And the third step is to pass you the food. So there are 3 steps. So for this seed, same thing, there are also the 3 steps. The step 1 is the seed needs to, the animal needs to go and get the fruit, right? How to get the fruit? So the animals eat the rambutans. By eating the rambutan fruits, they will have gotten the seed. Okay, then the second step is they want to travel, right? As the animal travels further away. Okay, the third step is to give you the seed and to throw away the seed. They may throw away the seeds. Okay, they either throw or sometimes they spit out. Throw away or spit out. Okay, so these 3 steps. Okay, eat the fruit, travel, and spitting it out. Well, these 3 basic steps. The first, what is very important is this thing called traveling further. You must mention it. You must mention the idea of dispersal. Dispersal means to move further away from the parent plant. Okay, so because it can move further away from parent plant, they can be dispersed over a wider area. Okay, you cannot just say eat the seeds and disperse through and throw it out. And this is, you cannot say disperse through the droppings. You cannot say you poop out the seeds because rambutan seeds are big, right? They're pretty hard, right? So don't say disperse through the droppings. This is either throw or spit out the seeds. Okay. If you want to talk about dispersal through the droppings, now this is the one, right? Tomatoes. Tomato seeds can be dispersed through the droppings. So you will be the same one, it's the same kind of answer, but instead of dispersal through by throwing or spitting out, you'll be dispersing through the droppings. So the same thing, how can you disperse? There's 3 steps, right? The first step is to take the fruit. So the animals eat the tomato fruits. Oh, wrong spelling, tomato fruits. Okay, there's a typo here. Okay, you eat the tomato fruits, and then as they travel further, okay, as the animals travel further away, right? Then the last one will be they disperse the seeds through their droppings. Okay, so this one is through the dropping instead of throwing away. All right, so that's the only difference. Okay, travel further away. All right. Okay, question 13. John dropped 3 paper helicopters in front of a fan and measured the distance traveled by the seed. So he recorded the results shown in the table below by the length of wing-like structure and the time taken for the paper helicopter to reach the ground. So what can John conclude from the experiment? Now, underline the word conclude. What does conclude mean? Conclude means to give a relationship answer. Okay, they can conclude can be asking, okay, asking for a property of the material. Okay, for what can you conclude? I can conclude that it is a conductor of electricity, a property, or you can conclude with a relationship if they give you data, a table, or a graph. Then you can conclude that, oh, as the as the wing-like structure increases, what happened to the time, and so on and so forth. Okay, so in this case would be a relationship. So if it's about the relationship, so you want to pay attention to the table, and the table has several headings. This is the heading length of wing-like structure and the time taken for the parachute to reach the ground. I want you to pay attention to these words because you have to use these words word for word, right? So you're going to say as the length of wing-like structure increases, right? The time taken for a paper helicopter to reach the ground also increase. Okay, so this is our answer, and you want to write them properly in try not to miss out any words. Okay, so as the length of wing-like structure increases, the time taken for paper helicopter to reach the ground increases as well. Okay, so this will be my answer. Make sure that you follow the question word for word. This is from the table. Okay, and the time taken for helicopter to reach the ground also is from the table. Some of people only write out the time taken increases, did not say that it's for the paper helicopter to reach the ground. You should say that. Okay, the next one. Based on the experiment, which seed will be able to grow more healthily? Now, this is based on the experiment underlying, very importantly, based on the experiment. What does based on the experiment means? It means that you have to go up and look at the experiment, and you have concluded that the length of the wing-like structure as it increases, the time taken it reach the ground increases. So look at this, the wing-like structure, which one has a longer wing-like structure? X has a longer wing-like structure than Y, isn't it? Yeah. So Y has a shorter wing-like structure, X has a longer wing-like structure. So based on the experiment, which one will grow healthier? I will know that it is seed X. So this is an explain question again. Explain meaning CER, right? So you're going to answer, you structure your answer in terms of CER. So let's begin. Okay, give our claim. Our claim is the seed X. Evidence, what do you see here that tell you that, oh, must be seed X? Well, yeah, seed X has a longer wing-like structure. So you use the word longer rather than bigger because the question, the experiment is about the length. It's about the length. So I want to talk about the length of the wing-like structure. And finally, and how does this help the seed to grow healthier? Oh, because if you have a longer wing-like structure, it can take a longer time to reach the ground. This is important. You must say that because the experiments say the longer it is, the longer the time it takes for it to reach the ground. So seed X takes a longer time to reach the ground. This is important statement. Without this, it will be a wrong because you must base on the experiment. All right, so if it takes a longer time to reach the ground, how does it lead you to grow healthier? So seed X can be dispersed by wind further, okay? And so seed X will be less overcrowded, right? And there is less competition for super mousawang. Okay, so super mousawang is sunlight, mineral salts, space, and water. All right. Okay. All right. So that is my answer. Okay. Keywords will be, you must mention that a longer wing-like structure will take a longer time to reach the ground. This one is important because it's based on experiment. And use the word dispersed by wind. Dispersed by wind. Further, the word further must be there. ER must be there. It must be comparative, right? So less overcrowding and therefore less competition. Okay, the ones in red are keywords. All right, so the last question, 14. So if you want to see where the plants will be dispersed, I mean where the seeds will be dispersed, if you have a direction of the wind, okay, if you know the direction of wind, this wind is in this direction, the young will all be dispersed in the direction of the wind. Okay, will all be dispersed in the direction of the wind. If it's dispersed by water, then you will want to look out for the direction of the water flow, and you will be dispersed all in the direction of the water flow downstream. Nothing will be found upstream. Okay, if dispersed by splitting, the young will be all dispersed around close to the parent plant. And if it's by animals, it can be dispersed anywhere it wants to without any limitation. It does not need to depend on the wind direction. You can disperse up there as well. Okay, to the furthest corner as well. It doesn't really matter. Okay, all right. So that's all for this topic of reproduction in flowering plants. If you have not gotten all right, you have to revise this, cover the questions, and test yourself again. Make sure you get every question correct, right? Compare word for word as far as possible. Stay close to the answers. Okay. All right. That's all for this video. See you again. Goodbye.